Leah. Okay, and great. And I will, oh, there's more coming. Hold on. I will go ahead and share our blessing and then we'll do some introductions and connect in that way. Great. So we'll begin by thanking God for the luxury, really, of stopping, the hustle and connecting with ancient words in order to realign. So, Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kirishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Great. And this is especially apropos tonight because many of, the texts of the Shema come from Torah. So it's literally to be soaking or marinating in these verses of Torah. That's totally accurate. So just to begin, if you want to share your name and kind of one or two words about, why the Shema tonight.
I'm Barry Noble, and I was particularly attracted to the Shema when I heard the interpretation that ends with God is oneness.
Beautiful. Joanne, do you want to go next?
Sure. My name's Joanne James, and I've been looking forward to ways to connect in around the Torah without leaving home. And I was saying that I have a book by Rabbi David Cooper, God is a Verb, and I've worn out the page that his translation I really liked of the Shema. It really deepened the whole message for me.
Yeah, wonderful. Love that when you wear down an entire page. That's great. Marcia, do you want to go?
Sure. I'm Marcia Andrews, and besides always wanting to hear what Rabbi Solomon has to say about anything, reading the handout, I was gobsmacked by the idea of we are all a part, the world, the universe, everything is a part of God. Because to me, I had just come to be comfortable with the idea that God is everywhere and that God is a part of everything, and to have that turned around that way, I couldn't sleep. I cried happy tears. I don't know. I was just, that concept just slapped me silly.
That's awesome. Susanna. And maybe we'll go Libby, Susanna, and Geraldine.
Okay, well, how could you go wrong with Shema? It's all really one. I mean, that just really touched me. And so here I am. I just want to say I just got a phone call from Nancy Landy. She signed up for the class, but she thought it was at TBI. So I told her to come over to my house and we can watch it together. So you'll see Nancy Landy here in a few minutes.
That's beautiful. Thank you. Susanna, do you want to share verbally or?
Yeah, maybe a little. It's hurting me to talk today, but I'm very happy to be here, and I'm another one who wants to learn anything Rabbi Solomon wants to teach, and anything that's on Zoom. through the temple. I'm really happy to be here.
Thank you. So good to see you. Geraldine, we can't hear you yet.
Sorry. I'm Geraldine Moreno, and I'm here because this is just seemed like a wonderful opportunity to be part of my learning that I'm doing this year. And just by chance, I returned today this children's book called The Shema and the Mezuzah. It really didn't have to do with the Shema per se, but it had to do with the Mezuzah. So it had me thinking about the Shema. So yeah, I'm just here and I'm glad to be here and glad to be in a class with Rabbi Solomon again.
Thank you. Great. And Judy, so great to see you. Maybe we'll go Judy, Janine, and Chris, and then Leah.
Hi, Judy Goldstein. Well, I was particularly interested in taking this class before you leave us. I think regardless of the topic, I would have signed up. And of course, the topic is, so central to being Jewish and our theology and our personal spirituality.
Yeah, beautifully said. It's so good to see you, Judy. It's been a while. Janine and Chris, and then Leah.
I'm Janine Gordon, and I in one of my discussions with Rabbi Solomon, we talked about prayers and that it would be good to be learning more. And so I really appreciate you doing this, and thank you. And in terms of the Shema, I really connect with how Rabbi Green talks, thinks, and experiences it in terms of us all being of the same origin and that we're all interconnected. And that's very meaningful for me. So that's where I'm coming from. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Hi, I'm Chris Seaman, and I'm really interested to take this because I've loved Rabbi Solomon's other classes. I'm so sorry that this is going to be the last one. In terms of the topic, I'm really interested in thinking more about the idea of oneness, which like everyone else, I really think that's so central to everything. So I'm looking forward to sort of having 2 nights of just really focusing on that. Nice to see everybody again.
Great. And Leah, and then Nancy.
Hello, I just got back this afternoon from a plane, so maybe not so verbal, but definitely happy to be studying with you, Rabbi Solomon, as much as I'm able, is the draw. I love the Shema and exploring deeper just that. I just need to show a book that I'm reading. Maybe you all know it. It's The Path of Blessing. Let's see how I can focus it. The Path of Blessing by Rabbi Marsha Prager, where she just takes the bracha, goes so deep with each word and each letter. So then when I saw your class, it's just like that's going to be just more of that, just going so deep. I'm really excited going letter by letter with the words and how you can spark the divinity in each letter.
Gorgeous. Gorgeous. Thank you. And Nancy, so glad you found your way.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I went to TBI. It's one of those days. I think the question was, what do we think of Shema?
Sounds good.
Is that?
Yeah.
Okay. 2 of my favorite Hebrew words are Hineni and Shema. And when I saw there was a class on it, it was so exciting to go deeper than what I might think and hear what all of you think, and especially you, Rabbi Solomon. So, and it's a prayer I've known as a child, and I can say I have known nothing else since, except for as a 4-year-old, the Yishkada Yishkadat. That's how I remember it.
The Kaddish.
It's not right, but I remember the sounds of those words the way I said them. So I'm really glad to be learning about Shema. Thank you.
Awesome.
I'm glad you're here.
It's really beautiful. Thank you, everybody. And as you can tell, there's already a lot on the table in terms of your own knowledge and your own experience. So that's really tremendous. And very much this is an opportunity for us all to learn from each other. And thank you for all your kind words. So we're going to dive right in. I wanted to kind of prime the pump with these sources. I put them in the chat. And we're going to go to it. And the flow that I'm really thinking about for these 2 nights is, walking our way gently through these sources and then leaving some time at the end of each night for kind of a prompt or a light, assignment that you want to take on in relationship to the Shema, so that by the end of the second class, perhaps you've even reconstructed the Shema or created a ritual around it, but in some way made it personal for you. So does that make sense in terms of scope of where we're headed? Okay. Because I emphasize the end because I really encourage you to kind of almost take off your intellectual or academic hats a little bit and open up your hearts really to see how this text and how some of these interpretations might meet you where you are in your life right now. So with that gigantic, audacious goal or kavanah, we're going to look first at a piece about kavanah. So there are 2 terms that I just want to kind of presence, keva and kavanah. And keva is structure, and kavanah is intention or direction. And these 2 words are really 2 polarities within a conversation around life and in particularly Jewish prayer. And so the keva is the structure of the service. And I just want to share with you one quick example so that you can see it of the keva. Because as you can imagine, we love keva as Jews and as humans, really. The kind of attention and resting that's possible when we have keva. So here is one version of keva that paints the Shema in context. So I hope everybody can see that. I'm going to scooch it up a little bit. So this is how Shema fits in the service. So Shema is said twice a day, morning and evening. Uvashochbecha, uvakumecha, when you lay down and when you rise up. And in those 2 services, this is the arc. And so basically you have the morning blessings, Birkot HaShachar, and Psuke de Zimra, the verses of song. the Baruch is the kind of capstone or shofar call that you know the Shema is coming. And then in the morning, you have love. And love surrounds both of the 6 words of the Shema itself. And in the evening, it's Ma'ariv Aravim. Don't worry if these words kind of don't make sense. I was going to try to draw it. And the way I usually draw it for people is, and if you want to grab a sticky note or something, the first image is either a sun or a moon. So that's the first blessing before the Shema. And if you want to have Baruch before that, you can put a Baruch and then sun and a moon. So it's about creation and literally light. And then love. So then you would do the heart. And that's either Ahavat Olam at night, eternal love, or Ahava Rabbah in the morning, which is kind of generous, overflowing love. And then you have the Shema. And when I say the Shema, I mean the 6 words, Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. And then we're not going to go into it too deeply, but the Shema actually has, if you want your brain to really get a little workout tonight, the Shema has 3 components of it. And those 3 components are also in the mezuzah. So Geraldine, it doesn't surprise me that that you had this book about Shema and the mezuzah. And it's also in our tefillin, our phylacteries that some of us wear. And in the tefillin, it's actually, if you've ever seen the inside of a tefillin, there's 3 almost like shelves. And on each one of those shelves is a section of the Shema itself. So that's within the Shema. And then after the Shema, it's Micha Mocha, and in the evening, Hashkivenu. And then what comes after the Shema is the Amidah, Torah, and then the concluding part of the service. So I just did a lot right there. Does anybody have any questions or comments or thoughts? Yeah, Marcia, please.
What are the 3 components of the Shema without getting
too deep? Yeah. So Shema and Ve'ahavta. I would say, I found another graphic, but I didn't know if it would be too confusing. Let me just look one more time. Everybody learns so differently.
I don't want to interrupt your flow.
No, it's a really good question. So I want you to kind of have the material. So in the Shema itself is these 6 words, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad, and then on Yom Kippur we say aloud the Baruch Shem, that second line. And the first paragraph, so this is how it looks in terms of the 3 components. The first paragraph is Shema and Ve'ahavta. Okay, so that's on shelf number 1, Shema and Ve'ahavta. And that's why I say it's surrounded by love on both sides, because the prior blessing is Ahava Rabbah or Ahavat Olam, about love. And then right after you do Adonai Echad, Adonai is 1, you start, and you shall love, Ve'ahavta. So that's the first chunk of the Shema. And that comes, just so if this is helpful too, it comes from Deuteronomy 6, chapter 6, verses 4 through 9. The second chunk of the Shema, both in the mezuzah and in our tefillin, is from Devarim, Deuteronomy, chapter 11, verses 13 through 21. And this paragraph is called V'haya im Shemoah, and that's named by its first three words. And this is basically the kind of if-then paragraph. I don't like to usually say, reward and punishment, but the kind of the dialectic really in our relationship with God, because it's not just a given, it's actually a tension, a polarity between forces that makes it an ongoing process versus something that is once or static. That's the God is a verb. Another term for it is process theology, but we'll leave that. So this is the second paragraph of the Shema. And the third paragraph of the Shema is from Numbers, kind of more towards the middle, before Devarim, before Deuteronomy. And this is the paragraph all about tzitzit. Vayomer Adonai. It's often kind of tagged as, because again, those are the first two words. And God said to Moses, speak to them of how to make these fringes on their garments. It's a really fascinating paragraph, how to make themselves fringes on the corners of their garments throughout all ages. Let them attach a cord of blue to the fringe at each corner. That shall be your fringe. Look at it and recall all the commandments of the Lord and observe them, so that you do not follow your hearts and eyes in a lustful urge. Thus you shall be reminded to observe all my commandments. Be holy to your God. I am the Lord of your God who brought you out of Egypt to be your God. I am the Lord. So this is the app at the end of how to stay connected, literally, through those fringes. The kind of, what was that watch people had for a long time, to track your steps and all of that, the Fitbit. This is the God's Fitbit part. And so those are the three paragraphs of the Shema. Any other questions kind of on the breakdown? So the first paragraph, just to recap, is Shman ve'ahavta. The second paragraph is V'haya im Shemoah, if then. And that is a really interesting kind of agricultural imagery. The rain will fall at this time, harvest will happen, things like that. And then you zoom, either if you want to say out or in, to the personal. Then we have Vayomer Adonai, and God said to Moses in regards to the tzitziot, the fringes. So those are the three paragraphs. But in terms of when people just say the Shema, they're usually referring to just the first paragraph, which is the 6 words and the Ve'ahavta. Okay. Anybody else? All right, cool. So let us dive into this first text. And I have I'm actually working on writing my own Siddur. So I have a ton of material on each of these sections of the service, but these are components that I live with, that really I walk around with. Again, not from the academic, but really from the heart and the spirit place. So I love this text, and it my senior rabbi in Santa Barbara showed it to me, Rabbi Steve Cohen. We wrote a Siddur together, which is a life privilege. And the first question that he felt we needed to put at the beginning of the Siddur was, Ketzad hi hakavana? How do you develop a sense of kavana, a sense of intentionality and directionality, presence, you might say, which is totally profound when you think about it, like that's recorded, that I think it's just humbling and a relief, honestly, that everybody was trying to figure out, how do you even get ready to pray? Not even how do you pray, but how do you create the stillness and the focus? And Barry, can I ask you to read this one?
Okay, I need to make it bigger.
Yeah, does this help?
Reading it in English, right?
Yes, please.
How does one achieve mindfulness? One should clear his or her heart of all thoughts and should imagine him or herself standing before the divine presence. Therefore, he or she should sit for a bit before praying in order to direct his or her heart, and then he can pray with ease and sincerity. And he or she should not think of his or her prayer as a burden to carry and then unload. Therefore, he or she should sit for a bit after praying and then leave. The ancient sages would meditate, is that supposed to be meditate for an hour before praying and meditate for an hour after praying and would pray for an hour.
Thank you. So here you have a keva description, a structured description of how you achieve kavanah, of how you achieve a kind of wine within the glass being keva and the wine being the kavanah. And it's, it's a interesting kind of ratio, right? It's 1, 1, 1. Nothing is more important or less important. Yeah, Barry.
I just want to say, for those who don't meditate a lot, I've been meditating for more than 40 years, and the idea of clearing my heart or mind of all thoughts has been an impediment because I can't do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's totally fair to put that out there. And it's really, let me just take us to the Hebrew on that in order to direct. Yeah. קודם להתפלל כדי לכוון את ליבו, in order to align one's heart. So it's really not to empty out. It's actually to align, would probably be a closer translation. לכוון את ליבו, to lean or intend one's heart towards. Yeah. And אחר כך יתפלל בנוח, and after that you can pray with noach, like the word and the name noach. Noach is to rest, literally, like the ark rested. You can pray with mental rest, or mental heaviness is another way to interpret that. Yeah. Other thoughts just on this one, like, where does it land for you? What is it? What does it mean in terms of how you think about even preparing for prayer or making room for prayer? Yeah, Joanne, and then Marcia.
I like what you said, Barry. I think that the practice, they call that a practice because we don't, as humans, we don't empty. We just have to always keep coming back to it. And the other thing that I just thought of something before that about needing time to give ourselves, and if you are used to going for a meditation practice, just thinking about just like being still in what way that you can, and just having more time. And I think that's the emphasis on the hour, the hour, the hour.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not a full hour, but that's the idea for me, is just giving, not just rushing through a prayer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, powerful. Marcia and then Nancy.
I have chronic pain, sometimes very bad. And so I've learned biofeedback techniques of one sort or another. And that actually helps me prepare for prayer. That may sound strange, but it works in terms of me having a focus,
mm-hmm.
and narrowing that focus. Because with pain management, you have different visualizations, but you're basically approaching the pain and controlling the pain,
Mm-hmm.
bringing it into a controllable visualization, so that you feel that you can live with that pain at that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And
Powerful.
and for me, approaching prayer is a lot like that. It's slowly letting go of all of the things around me, all the distractions, even the sounds, so that I find myself in sort of a bubble. And that's when I feel most connected to Hashem, and able to pray most deeply. If any of that makes any sense at all, but that's
it's
very,
very, very powerful image. And also what you said about the biofeedback, this is about sitting for an hour. They would sit for an hour before, during, and after, and that sitting, that coming into our physicality, is something that, as a yoga practitioner and just I really appreciate, like, oh yeah, there's gravity to our bodies, and we exist in time and space. So that return to the body, I'm always struck by, like, oh yeah, you have to sit, you have to be, on the earth in some way, or at least on your tushy in some way. Nancy, yeah.
Well, I've been meditating for more than 50 years, and I've come to some conclusions for myself. And I think one of the main ones is I do get comfortable when I sit. And I find that the intention is not to get rid of everything, but to take note of what comes up, whether it's a family issue, or sometimes a prayer comes up, sometimes a word like Shema comes up. And then I bring myself back to my mantra. But it gives me a way to see what big things might be on my mind. And it helps me, therefore, to know what to pray for.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I said this in one other meeting, so I hope I'm not repeating, but there are times I get really bad cramps in my calf or the arch of my foot. And I've learned, instead of jumping up and, doing something with my leg, I just lean into the pain, feel how bad it is, and know that it will go away. And it always does. And just feeling the pain and where does it come from, has been a really interesting way to deal with not just physical pain, but mental pain as well, to lean into it. And I think meditating before and after praying helps to focus what your prayers are.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah, and also, both of you are kind of raising the notion of listening, which is interesting that, you would basically listen for your thoughts or your intentions or your heart's calling before you offered any words. There was a period of listening before and a period of listening after. And so if you think about if the Shema comes in the middle, it's a lot of listening in order to listen, which is, I think, a very kind of a life bumper sticker, listening in order to listen. Often in Torah, God calls out people not just one time, but twice, like Avraham. And there's often commentary about how, the first time our name is called, it's like maybe an outer identity or maybe, a passing, like, oh yeah, who is it? But it's that second calling that really gets us inside. So I want to take us to an element of the Shema, which is really special. And it comes, so this was from a Mishnah Torah from the Rambam, Moses Maimonides, on the laws of prayer. And this next text is going to come, I wonder if I didn't think about that element. Oh, yay, look at that. Cool. Chris, I didn't even have to ask you, although I know you would have known. So this element, maybe Geraldine, if you want to read this, where it says scripture records. Let me scooch it up a little bit.
Yeah, thank you, because mine is still on its side.
Okay.
The scripture records that Moses first proclaimed Shema Yisrael as the end of his life drew near. But ancient legend tells of an earlier Shema Yisrael, uttered by the sons of Jacob, gathered around their father's deathbed, to which he responded, Baruch Shem Kavod Melchto Leolam Va'ed. Recalling Jacob's murmured words of thanks, we whisper the words Baruch Shem, following the proclamation of God's unity.
So we could spend, an entire year studying this text. It's exquisite, really. And the reason why it stays with me again, kind of one of those texts I live with, is because Jacob, right, Yaakov, became Yisrael after wrestling with the angel. But he still was called Yaakov, Jacob, at certain times. And so here you have this image of Yaakov / Yisrael, this kind of liminal being who has, fluttered in the realms of the mystical and returned, wrestled with God. I mean, talk about an image. So you have Yaakov Yisrael getting ready to transition, calling his tribe, literally, the 13 children, and saying, Shema Yisrael, listen up, the children of Yisrael, my children. So it's like it's a direct dial right here of the Yisrael calling out to the Yisrael. And then as Geraldine read at the end, so, Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. So if you just think about any family systems awareness or therapy or whatever it is, your own family constellation, Jacob is saying, Kinder, my people, come together, stay as one. And then the kids recall back Baruch Shem. And, blessed is the name of the glory of God's kingdom forever and ever. So this becomes a conversation, a kind of last will and testament between parents and kids, kind of the sealing of the sealing. And this image also, speaks, I think is very eloquent in that we only say Baruch Shem in a whisper. There's triumphalism in our Shema being called out loudly and clearly. And then there's kind of a quaking humility or a softened unity replying back. Yeah, Leah, please.
So in an earlier class today, the teacher was saying that we whisper that because it was the first is written in the Torah and the other was not. Is that accurate?
Yes, that's also one of the many, many, many explications. Yes, for sure. But yeah, that's awesome.
I had never heard that before, so thank you.
And you saw it, right? You saw it in the text when we looked right here at the actual first paragraph of the Shema. Here, we see that right after Shema comes, who wants to call it out? Right after Shema comes Ve'ahavta, right? And so if you look literally, I think I can keep expanding this. This is fun, this whole zooming thing. So in the Torah itself, the ayin, the last letter of the word Shema, and the dalid of the echad are large. Together, they spell aid, which means witness. So there's, again, a tremendous amount written about how God is witnessing us, we are witnessing God. But the historical importance of the dalid is really interesting if you've ever want a little research project, but I'll give you the cliff note, which is if you didn't have this tiny little bump on the back, this little camel bump on the back of the dalid, what Hebrew letter would that be? A resh. Yeah. So it would be acher, that our God is other versus our God is one. So there is a lot of emphasis on, in the choreography of the prayer service itself, or saying Shema in your bed at night, to emphasize the dalid, echad. And historically, there were times in which, especially within the Reform movement, people stood to say the Shema as an expression of kind of pride, and should passers be walking by, they should be aware that Judaism's most important tenet is oneness. Yeah, Judy, please. Oops, can I unmute you, or do you want to? There you go.
That's the tradition that I grew up with. And I wonder why it doesn't. I mean, I tried not standing at times at TBI and other places to be congruent with the congregation, but it didn't feel right. And it felt like I was disconnecting from my family. So I stand, and there are a few others. I think Libby, maybe you do.
Yeah.
But if Libby isn't there, or Shirley, or a few others, it feels awkward.
Yeah.
To ask about that. And I also wanted to ask about why we say Baruch Shem um, out loud during high holidays, during Yom Kippur.
Yeah, great question. So, the historic, there's a lot of components, but one element is architectural, which is that the bima, the podium, historically in like ancient times was descended, was actually lower, not higher, which is its own kind of like fascinating, everything. So it used to be that you would go down, or the prayer leader or whoever would go down actually in order to say the Shema. So that was kind of ancient times. The Reform movement in particular became very attached to the choreography of standing because of this idea of as a political statement, essentially, that our God is one. Traditionally, people do not stand for the Shema because it literally says it when I lay down and when I rise up, and it says uveshoch becha uvekumecha. When you sit in your house, you should recite these things. So there's a description of sitting in your house. That's why it's kind of traditionally not said standing, and why the Reform movement does, because of that idea of if people are passing by, they should see people proudly standing erect as they say, our God is one. And that was based on a lot of kind of historical scrutiny at that time, of the proximity to our neighbors, and having our neighbors, kind of make assumptions based on what we were saying as they walked by, literally. Yeah. It's kind of like a Pledge of Allegiance, And I grew up standing too. I also really love it.
And covering our eyes, that's another piece. And also, why do we say it out loud?
Right. Yeah. So the covering of our eyes, and again, I'm giving you one of, hundreds of different explanations, but the covering our eyes is so that we are not distracted by our eyes view, and so that we can hear better. It's like very kind of medical almost, that when we cover our eyes, we open our ears. And because there's also part of the Shema which says, so that you shall not follow your eyes' lusts. The eyes are considered to be almost, kind of dangerous in the way that they move from place to place. So we cover our eyes, and some people make a shin for the Shema, or Shekhinah, the indwelling presence of God. And then in terms of the whisper kind of connecting, I guess, what Leah was saying before, because it's not what's called doraita within the text itself, within the written Torah, we say it softly, so as not to interrupt the verses of the Torah itself. And on Yom Kippur, it's considered kind of again, another moment of triumph and pride, to kind of call it out loud back. And often it's taught because of this connection back to Jacob on his deathbed. When the children call back and say Baruch Shem aloud to their dad. And so too in that moment on Yom Kippur, our day of death, we call back as the children of Israel and say Baruch Shem aloud. Yeah, Nancy, I see you.
There's a little bit of lag time for my comment here, but you had said listen up, and just now you were talking about listening with your ears. And so much of the Torah that I read metaphorically.
Mm-hmm.
So Shema for me is, and maybe I should correct this, but is listening with my heart rather than my ears. And correct me if that is not.
Yeah, I think, whatever body part works, Thich Nhat Hanh has all sorts of prayers just for his liver. So yeah, wherever is your most receptive place, I would say. Absolutely. We have, Chris, and then I see Libby.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I think, that forever and ever is part of that oneness. It's kind of a beautiful callback. It's a different aspect of oneness than maybe you think of with the Shema when you just recite that bit of it. So I think, it's part of that whole general connecting with everything, or just like the rain, even in Deuteronomy, with you have the rain and what we'd call the climate and the environment. I mean, it's just this expansiveness, and then you get that temporality too, which is just lovely as well.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, the kind of divine echo, above and below. Yeah, because there's all sorts of, the yeshiva shel mala and the yeshiva shel mata, the kind of study house above and study house below. So the kind of interplay. Libby.
What I wanted to say is that I also learned early on about standing. The whole congregation would stand when it was time for the Shema. And the way I always learned is that it's connected to witnessing, that we are witnessing as individuals and as a community, that, God is one in all the ways that can mean.
Beautiful.
So that's very important to me. And Judy, I'm glad you and Shirley and
there are others too, I think.
Yeah, Griffel, right? Others stand. So it's meaningful to me personally.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And to me as well. Yes. So
yeah.
But I do feel awkward depending on how many people stand.
Right.
I agree. I grew up in a very conservative shul, not reformed, and we all stood. And then at TBI they didn't. It was like, oh, we don't stand.
Well, yeah. I want to clarify. TBI, when Rabbi Myron Kimberg, who was a Reform rabbi,
I was here then. Yeah.
When Rabbi Kimberg was here, who was for 18 years as a Reform rabbi serving a conservative congregation, we all stood. So this is newer practice to have everybody sit, more like modern Orthodox, maybe.
Yeah, and I would encourage you, like, lean into your roots. Like, that's where you will feel it the most powerfully. I can still picture my my grandparents like shouting the Shema, at times of real like trouble and stress and concern. So yeah, whatever. Did we just lose somebody? I'm wondering, did someone pop off the
Susan, maybe. Susan.
Oh, Susanna. Okay.
Susanna.
All right. I hope she's okay. All right. Yeah, so feel it. Yeah, feel it. I want to take us, we have about 6 minutes, and I want to just look with you all. The page that's next is, let's see, how do I go scooch down? Oh, there we go. Oh, I have to shrink. The page that's next is coming by Rabbi Green's book, The Sfat Emet, The Language of Truth. And it's a kind of connected piece to the midrash that we just looked at of Jacob and his sons. So we're not going to read this one through, but I just wonder if, if there were any comments or any lines that that folks wanted to kind of lift up and share. It's a very beautiful, beautiful text. Oh, good. Susanna's back. Great. Hi, Susanna. We missed you. Welcome back. So what I'll just share for me, this is this document by the Sfat Emet in writing to one of his family members right before Pesach. And they're talking about how do you get ready for Pesach? And what is this? Pesach is actually to an open mouth. That's what Pesach means. Pe is your mouth, and sach is overflowing. So they're talking about, how do you get ready to kind of have this this leap, this jump, this speech rectification in some way, or rectification of speech, which is often what people think about, or it's, rare, but people who are kind of bizarre like me think about it in terms of Pesach. So what they say is, so because most people don't know how to leap up and attach themselves to God, the idea here is something called devekut or devekus, which means to glue yourself to God. Most people don't understand how to glue themselves to God. I shall tell you. And it goes on to say the proclamation, to say Shema Yisrael, and so forth, needs to really be understood as it truly is, with pshita, with the kind of basic simplicity. Don't get esoteric, says the Sfat Emet. That which is entirely clear to me, not from hearsay, but based on the holy writings of the great Kabbalist, I'm obliged to reveal to you. This is it. The meaning of Yud He Vav He, right? Those four primal letters of God's name that's used in the Shema. There are a few permeations of God's names, but the Yud He Vav He is used in the Shema. Is not that God is the only God, negating other gods, though that is true too, but the meaning is deeper. There is no being other than God. No being other than God. So this would be, and if I had a whiteboard, I would, kind of draw. This is the image of, rather than kind of a Hindu perspective, perhaps, of, there being endless gods in the world. The image that the Sfat Emet is bringing is that all of those gods are encompassed within the Godhead, the one God. There is no being other than God. And this is where the term Ein Od and the Nigun and kind of the Kabbalistic meditation on this idea of Ein Od, there is nothing else, really comes into play. And so he says, everything that exists in the world, spiritual and physical, is God.
Mhm.
Right? So your shoelace and one of your hairs and an airplane and your liver are all God. It is only because of the Tzimtzum, the contraction, which is a Lurianic Kabbalah reference, that was God's will, that holiness descended rung after rung until actual physical things were formed out of it. And so this is why we need to leap, is because we are no longer, it's not necessarily obvious that we are attached anymore. So we leap in order to reattach. And then he goes on to use Lurianic Kabbalah a little bit, this idea of gathering sparks. But at the end, every person can glue themselves to God within their physical body, and in that way go very high, very, very high, truly to God. I'm right here. So this is a whole other kind of relationship to these 6 words that, in fact, it's a physical action that is expressed through these words of us, reattaching to God. Yeah, Leah.
So like a half raise my hand because I feel a little silly, but if we are God, then, and if everything that exists in every single thing is that holiness and divinity, then I don't get the word attachment, because you can't unattach. You can go unconscious or go blind to it, but it doesn't stop the attachment. I mean, you can't unattach.
Yeah. And I think you've got it, which is that it's about awareness, and kind of recognizing that attachment, recommitting to that attachment. It's like Shabbat always happens, whether or not we know it or not. But it's in our Shabbating that we meet Shabbat. Everybody, I see it's 8:32. I just want to honor everybody's time. And Marcia, I see your hand, and
no, it's all right.
I'll invite folks, anybody who wants to stay after, but I want to just give you one tiny prompt, which is to play with this experience of oneness this week. Kind of, name moments where you sense oneness, moments where you sense disconnection, but explore this notion of echad in your own world. And you might you could keep an echad journal or, sticky notes, whatever works for you, but I just encourage you to kind of play around with it. Thank you all so much for being here. I will stay on if anybody wants to chat for a few more minutes. I'm going to stop our recording, and we'll see you on Zoom next week.
Thanks.